on the train. Now, there will be announcements. I hope it's not too disturbing, and I hope that the background noise is not too much. Let's give it a try. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda.
The next station is
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Paribrajikacharya, Astotra Shatashi, Majesty Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Kodi Vaishnavanda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Skaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kundgiri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Mandamandam Ki Jai, Navadvip Mahakudam Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, all glories to all the assembled devotees. All glories to all the assembled devotees. All glories to all the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. So as I mentioned, we are doing this class on the train today, and I hope you can hear me. I'm trying to speak close to the phone. We are now arriving at Glen Eden. So here we have a look at the window. There we go. Yes, this is wonderful Glen Eden, and I'm on my way to Waiheke Island again. I thought that see if we can, if it's manageable to do the class on the train. Although of course it is rather noisy. So we're reading today from Bhagavad-gita chapter 2, text number 8. And this is, oh, I need my glasses. I just remembered I cannot read without glasses. I'm using the mini pocket edition of Bhagavad-gita, which has got tiny writing, which my eyes cannot handle anymore. So here we go. All right, so chapter 2, text 8. Go back a little bit further. Here we go. So we're just about to get up to these famous "You are not the body" verses, but we're not quite there yet. So the previous verse is where Arjuna's finally saying, look, I'm confused. I really don't know what to do. Please instruct me.
The next station is Fruit Battle Road.
All right, so text 8. Nahi prapasyami mama na nujat yacho kamucha shanam indriyanam avapya bhumau asapatnam haridha rajam suranam api chadyapatyam. So word by word. Do not. He, certainly. Prapasyami, I see. Mama, my. Apanudyat, can drive away. Yat, that which.
We are now arriving at Fruitvale Road.
Shokam.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform at the station.
Excuse the announcements. Shokam, lamentation. Uch Oshanam, drying up. Indriyanam, of the senses. Avapya, achieving. Bhumau, on the earth. Asapatnam, without rival. Ridham, prosperous. Rajam, kingdom. Suranam, of the demigods. Api, even. Cha, also. Adhipatyam, supremacy. There's an interesting couple of words that are similar here, which is asapatyam, without rival, and then adhipatyam, supremacy. So one is like very similar expressions. All right, translation. I can find no means to drive away this grief, which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it, even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth, with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. Purport. Although Arjuna was putting forward so many arguments based on knowledge of the principles of religion and moral codes, it appears that he was unable to solve his real problem without the help of the spiritual master.
The next station is Newland.
Lord Sri Krishna. He could understand that his so-called knowledge was useless in driving away his problems, which were drying up his whole existence, and it was impossible for him to solve such perplexities without the help of a spiritual master like Lord Krishna. Academic knowledge, scholarship, high position, etc., are all useless in solving the problems of life. Help can be given only by a spiritual master like Krishna. Therefore, the conclusion is that a spiritual master who is 100% Krishna conscious is the bona fide spiritual master. For he can. Lord Chaitanya said that one who is master in the science of official position is the real spiritual master. All right, so I'll just pause here and make some comments. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Amrilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaurava. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the reason I'm pausing here is that this section of the purport is directly addressing the translation, and then it'll go on to describe further about the qualification of the spiritual master. So the translation again. I can find no means to drive away this grief which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it, even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth, with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. So in the purport here, Prabhupada is saying how, despite Arjuna, doing his best to refer to what he's learned in terms of religious principles and moral codes, as he was trained as a Kshatriya, he's not satisfied. He's unable to solve his problems. So he needs to turn to the spiritual master, and in this case, specifically Krishna. And interesting point here is that he could understand that his so-called knowledge wasn't really helping him. It was useless. And Prabhupada is saying here that academic knowledge, scholarship, high position, etc. are all useless in solving the problems of life. Help can only be given by a spiritual master like Krishna. So it's often said these days that the science is God. This is the religion that people follow today, that they think that if they just follow whatever the academic people are telling,
The next station is Avondale.
Whatever science is apparently telling, even though that changes all the time, that this will solve the problems of life. That through technology, we'll be able to merge humans and robots and create the superhuman being, which will be able to solve so many of our problems and make us more productive than ever. This promise, or the idea, we'll be able to go and live on Mars. I don't know why you'd really want to. It doesn't sound very appealing, at least the way NASA describes it. But these are the times we live in. And even when I was a child, I remember I had this idea that everything man-made is better than natural. So I remember at one point I was describing my school uniform of the future, and it was like everything nylon and rayon and viscose and all these artificial materials. It didn't take me too long to realize that actually this is not the best. When I started to do triathlons, very quickly I realized that when it comes to training, woolen garments are expert. They're the best. You can't beat them. Like merino undergarments are the best for keeping you warm without overheating you. In many ways, we'll find that nature provides everything already that trumps whatever we can make with our man-made attempts. However, there is still this idea that, oh yes, by our efforts, by our science and our technology, we'll be able to solve the world's problems. We'll be able to remove disease, and we'll be able to cure all economics and all wars between people. But this will never happen, because we realize that there are higher principles than us, and higher personalities like Mother Nature, for a start.
We are now arriving at Avondale.
We'd never be
to tag off with your AT hop card.
We'll never
keep your ticket until you leave the station.
We'll never be able to be successful if we try to ignore the laws of nature that are already there, and ultimately understanding that there's a lawmaker behind all of this, and that is Krishna. And so therefore the solution to all of our problems, as it said here, can only be given by a spiritual master like Krishna. So it means that understanding material things won't solve our problems. We have to go to the root, which is the spiritual solution. When we understand, as it describes in Bhagavad-gita, that everything's owned and controlled by Krishna, and that there's nobody who has more power than him, and there's nobody who wishes us well more than Krishna. With this understanding, we can be very peaceful, because we know that, okay, someone's in charge, and that person in charge has our best interest in mind. But as long as we rebel against the basic laws of nature and laws of God, it causes problems for us. And so therefore, in the Bhagavad-gita, it's described, approach a spiritual master to understand the science of Krishna. And when we can connect everything to Krishna, then we can understand the way things are meant to work. And therefore, we'll have a harmonious life.
Next station is Mount Albert. For safety, emergency, and general information, see the posters displayed at the end of each carriage or online at at.govt.nz. Your AT hop card
excuse the commercial interruptions.
At any time.
So, now a little bit of Tereo as well. All right. So It's just like I'm on a train at the moment, right? And I might think that, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to get on any train and it'll take me to my destination. But, if I was on the wrong side of the tracks today, then I wouldn't have been heading towards Auckland City. I'd be heading away from Auckland City. And unfortunately, a lot of the choices that people are making these days are not actually bringing them closer to happiness and to God, but they're actually taking them away. So this is just explaining here why is it that Arjuna is unsatisfied. It's because he's been looking at everything from the material lens, not looking at it from the perspective of, what does God want? What does Krishna want in the situation? So Prabhupada continues on in this purport, focusing on understanding what do we mean by a spiritual master. And this is what he says. The conclusion is that a spiritual master
now arriving at Mount Albert
is one
Find the gap between the train and the platform at the station.
Who is 100% Krishna conscious. So, a spiritual master who is 100% Krishna conscious is the bona fide spiritual master, for he can solve the problems of life. And then Prabhupada continues, Lord Chaitanya said that one who is master in the science of Krishna consciousness, regardless of his social position, is the real spiritual master. Kiba vipra kiba nyasi shudra kenanai, ye Krishna tattva veta se guru hai. It does not matter whether a person is a vipra, learned scholar in Vedic wisdom, or is born in a lower family, or is in the renounced order of life. If he is master in the science of Krishna, he is the perfect and bona fide spiritual master. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 8:128. So without being a master in the science of Krishna consciousness, no one is a bona fide spiritual master. So now, after explaining that it doesn't matter what your social position is, you can be a spiritual master if you understand the science of Krishna, then Prabhupada gives another quote from Padma Purana on making the same point in the opposite way. Satkarmani puna vipro mantra tantra visharadaha avaishnava guru nasyat vaishnava swapacho guru. A scholarly Brahmana, expert in all subjects of Vedic without being a Vaishnava or expert in the science. But a person born in the family of a can become a spiritual master if he is a Vaishnava or Krishna conscious. From Padma Purana. So these are very powerful statements here that, we may be proud of our family traditions, which is nothing wrong with that.
We are now arriving at Baldwin Avenue. Please find the gap between the train and the platform station.
If we're born in a family, of great scholars and, great devotees and people of knowledge, that's a wonderful thing. It's a great advantage. But if we don't take advantage of that upbringing to become expert in Krishna consciousness, then we've lost the opportunity that we've been given. And even a person who's born in, an uncultured family, if they can learn about the science of Krishna consciousness, they also can become guru. So, continuing on, the problems of material existence, birth, old age, disease, and death, cannot be counteracted by accumulation of wealth and economic development. In many parts of the world, there are states which are replete with all facilities of life, which are full of wealth and economically developed. Yet the problems of material existence are still present. Come at the top here. All right. So, so even countries that are so wealthy, they still suffer the same problems of material existence, birth, death, old age, and disease. They are seeking peace in different ways, but they can achieve real happiness only if they consult Krishna or the Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which constitute the science of Krishna, through the bona fide representative of Krishna, the man in Krishna consciousness.
Your AT hop card or ticket may be checked at any time.
Okay, so I'll just pause before I continue on with that topic. And I want to go back to the topic of how anyone can become a guru. Excuse me. So what Lord Chaitanya is telling you is that you need to be a guru. That, Lord Chaitanya's mission, he said that I'm just one person. How far can how much can I do to spread this Krishna consciousness? If I'm the only gardener, it's limited. Of course, God is not limited, but He's created an opportunity for all of us to participate in this wonderful Sankirtan mission, where we can help people
now arriving at Morningside.
Solve their problems of life.
Between the train and the platform at the station.
To solve their problems at the root by connecting everyone to God so they can understand the principles that the world is living by. And therefore they can live in harmony with God, and at the end of this life go back to be with Him in a loving relationship. And so it's very clear from Lord Chaitanya here that this qualification of becoming a guru does not depend on your social position or your race or your nationality. Gender is not mentioned, but also that is not a factor. Anything material like that does not affect the qualification of someone to share Krishna consciousness with others. You do not have to have a rubber stamp from an organization to spread Krishna consciousness to others. All you need is faith in these words of Lord Chaitanya, and you need to understand the science of Krishna. And this is a great blessing, because when you are sharing with others, you learn it better. You become forced. It's like if you go on book distribution. Oh, I'm selling these books. I better read these books and find out what they're about. The more you read the books, the more inspired you become, and the better you get at, distributing those books, because you can share. Oh, I read this. It was amazing. You should also read these books. So these are some of the ideas about when you have something extremely valuable and you don't share it, that's called being a miser. And therefore, everybody, no matter what your position, should take it upon yourself to share this with others. We all have different realizations, and we all have a different situation, so we can all share in a different way.
The next station is Kingsland.
I'm on.
The station is temporarily closed for redevelopment.
So I'm.
Service number 64 will run every 15 minutes between Mountain Station, Kingsland Station, and Grafton Station. Visit 18 Mountain Station for details. So, I'm trying to share Krishna consciousness through this Facebook here to whatever audience. And don't think that by sharing Krishna consciousness with those who are already subscribed to Krishna consciousness is anything less. We should try to share Krishna consciousness for everybody. And this is one of the principles of the purpose-driven church, which you may have heard me mention before. The idea of it is that everyone in the organization develops himself as a balanced lover of God and the different elements that it involves. Part of that is developing fellowship with other devotees. Because by preaching to other devotees, it increases our own faith, and it increases our connection with each other, and helps people to remain connected to Krishna consciousness. Everybody's life has different seasons. We have ups and downs, summer and winter. And when we know that we've got devotees that are there for us, that can inspire us and encourage us and hear from us and listen to us, it's very important. It's not just about finding people who know nothing about Krishna and giving them a book.
or making a devotee, so to speak. It's very important that we put our energy into caring for each other, so that instead of having people coming in the front door, but as many going out the back door, we want to be filling up the house with devotees, and whoever comes never wants to leave. They're so happy in the association of devotees.
Grafton. Your AT hop card or ticket may be checked at any time.
So another point I'm going to get from this section is we don't need to. I might have mentioned it in a previous class, but we were at a birthday party and someone was handing out gifts. So someone gave my son a can of hairspray, coloured hairspray. It changes the colour of your hair, probably blue. So my son looked at the bottle and it says, "Be yourself." And he started laughing. He said, "This is a contradiction. It's saying that to be yourself, you have to artificially put something else on you." And this is a big issue that we have today, that people feel that we have to change the outside body. We can't just be happy with the body that we've, and a big issue that's facing the world at the moment is, naturally as people grow up, when they're young, they become a little confused about their identity. Oh, I was born as a girl, but maybe I should be a boy. Maybe I'm really a boy, but I'm in a girl's body. And someone just has these random kind of thoughts, and there's people out there that are, I think, are demoniac, that immediately say, "Oh, okay, so you're a boy and you think that you're a girl? Oh, then straight away we have to do the chop-off operation." Yeah, which is just ridiculous. Sorry, excuse the pun. But, just this idea that, just because someone has some kind of feminine qualities and they're born as a man, that immediately they have to, change their body to try to match it, which is not even possible. And the amount of stress and suicide and mental problems that this is causing in society is shocking. Be who you want to be. There are feminine men and there's masculine women. That's fine. That's called nature. But it doesn't mean we have to change our physical body, to match. It's like people that have that idea have a very narrow view of what it means to be a man or a woman or whatever. Just let people be who they are. And Lord Chaitanya is saying the same thing here. It's just be who you are and share Krishna consciousness with others. So this is from one point of view. And the other point of view is that the other point is that we show respect to everybody. It's not that we, or rather we especially show respect to someone based on their Krishna consciousness, even if they're not wealthy,
Exit here for Auckland Hospital.
Or not strong or powerful, or born in a fancy family, or if they know about Krishna consciousness, then we want to hear from them and we want to respect. All right, so then we'll continue where Prabhupada is talking about how, which I've already read part of this, material problems cannot, any problem, the problems of material existence, birth, death, old age and disease and death, cannot be counteracted through economic development and wealth. And we can see, we had this, what do you call this thing? COVID-19 pandemic, right? The wealthy countries are affected as much as any other country. In fact, they were affected more. Why is that? Well, because when people try to become God, they make the problem worse than it was in the first place. Whereas you see countries like Africa and, the countries that just accept things in a more natural way, they didn't exacerbate the problem. Just like, lockdowns. They create their own source of problems. We can see with the vaccines that now people have taken the vaccines and that more people are dying than prior to the vaccine. prior to the COVID even. And so these are some of the effects when people try to become greater than God or greater than nature. They actually cause more problems than were there to start with. So Prabhupada's reinforcing it here. It's not money that's going to solve the problems of birth, death, old age, and disease. These problems require spiritual solutions, and ultimately we need to get out of this world to solve these problems. So I'll continue. If economic development and material comforts could drive away one's lamentation for family, social, national, or international inebrities, then Arjuna would not have said that even an unrivaled kingdom on earth or supremacy like that of the demigods in the heavenly planets would be unable to drive away his lamentation. He sought, therefore, refuge in Krishna consciousness. That is the right path for peace and harmony. So economic development or supremacy over the world can be finished at any moment by the cataclysms of material nature. Even elevation into a higher planetary situation, as men are now seeking on the moon planet, when Prabhupada wrote this, maybe we can say Mars now, can also be finished at one stroke. As we saw so many of the
next station is Newmarket.
We saw so many of the
stops at Parnell Station. Pathways from Parnell Station may not be suitable for some customers. Please consider Newmarket or Britomart as alternatives.
Yeah, so we can see that so many of the NASA missions, they ended in death and explosions. And even recently, the Elon Musk's projects, sometimes those rockets blow up as well. So all of these projects which are glorified, at any moment they can just be finished. And then the Bhagavad-gita confirms this, saying that even if we go to the moon planet, it can all be over in a moment. Kshine punye martilo kam vishanti. When the results of pious activities are finished, one falls down again from the peak of happiness to the lowest status of life. Many politicians of the world have fallen down in that way. Such downfalls only constitute more causes for lamentation. Therefore, if we want to curb lamentation for good, then we have to take shelter of Krishna, as Arjuna is seeking to do. So Arjuna asked Krishna to solve this problem definitely, and that is the way of Krishna consciousness. So there's a few points I wanted to touch on here, which I haven't spoken about yet, really. So again, Prabhupada's emphasizing that, look, if Arjuna, being wealthy would solve all the problems, then Arjuna wouldn't have said that, even if I get all the wealth in the world, it's not going to solve the problem. So Arjuna is admitting here that money is not the solution. And even if he conquered the whole world, and he was the supreme master and the supreme dictator or whatever, the king of the whole whole world, that still would not have given him peace of mind. And we all know that someone could be the leader of the world and it can be finished in a moment. We've seen so many revolutions and wars where one group or person was in charge and then they were overtaken by others. This is the nature of the world. It happens all the time. Not only that, but when a kingdom falls, it affects all of the people. And we're experiencing this at the moment. We're entering into depression in our economy. And we're seeing that there's food shortages, that there's shortages of fertilizer.
We are now arriving at Newmarket.
Fossil fuels are basically running out.
And Southern Line services.
They're becoming unaffordable. And so the civilization that we know it is built upon energy, the cheap energy of oil and petrol. And as this cheap energy is no longer available, society as we know it is going to change. We won't be able to fly or drive, all over the place. We'll have to more or less stay in a limited area. The food shortages that we're experiencing means that people are going to have to learn to grow their own food again. And it's something we should start immediately. Amyatma Prabhu wrote a wonderful comment on the last class. I was talking about how as devotees we should try to move into the country and grow our own food. And he was asking, well, how can we do that if we're city dwellers, city slickers? How can we make that transition? And the first point is to learn to grow your own food wherever you live. Even if you live in a high-rise apartment building, you can grow some. You can like sprout some mung beans or something. There's things that you can do, and if you've got a window box, you can grow some vegetables like lettuces or tomatoes in there, or some herbs. Just start to learn how to grow food. And if you actually live in the suburbs, where you have some space, whatever means you might want to use garden boxes or whatever, but try to grow some food, because the food shortages are coming. It's inevitable, just from a basic analysis of the way things are heading. And this is part of the way that the world is going at this point, that things are going to really go down before they come up. And the more that we can have food, the more we can ride through that period of time. Prabhupada encouraged us. He warned us that this was coming. And he encouraged us, the devotees should go and live in the country and be peaceful. Just look after yourself first. There's a conversation along those lines. And some devotees say, oh, but we should preach. And Prabhupada said, who will you preach to? First, you have to feed yourself. So anyhow, wherever we're living, this is the first step that we can do is, 1, grow our own food, and 2, make friends with your neighbours. It's a natural thing to do in the countryside. But even if you're living in back in the suburbs, go around to your neighbours and introduce yourself. Maybe just go around and say, hey, look, we really thought it would be a good idea to get to know each other. And here's some prasadam. It's a great way to begin preaching as well. There's a video, which I'll need to look up the reference for it, but I was listening to the idea. That one lady, she started out by holding a movie night once a week. What they did is they put a screen in them kind of at the end of the street. Anyone could come and watch the movie. And in this way, they started to develop their neighborhood community. And naturally, not everyone, this is not devotees that were doing this, but over time, everybody started to grow their own vegetables. They even started to have animals in their gardens. And they developed this incredible thing just because one person took the initiative to connect with their neighbors. So that's something that we could try. So growing our own food and getting to know our neighbors. I think these are the two really key things. And then if there's any calamities, then instead of people fighting off each other, like in a neighborhood, oh, they've got food, I'm going to steal from them, or steal from them. But then if you know your neighbors and your friends, then you can band together and protect each other from the outside. And if you're a good devotee, you're practicing and you're very kind and share Krishna consciousness freely and give prasadam to your neighbors, they'll become very favorable to Krishna consciousness through this very simple technique of personalism and community building. So going back to the conclusions of this verse, Arjuna tried material thinking to solve his problem, and it wasn't sufficient. Therefore, he had to turn to the spiritual master. In his case, directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in our case, we have the Bhagavad-gita, where we can also hear directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but also through the medium of the spiritual master and the devotees who have realization about Krishna. And that spiritual master doesn't have to be a sannyasi or anything like that. They just need to be a person who understands the science of Krishna. Whatever their upbringing is, whatever country they were born or raised in, is not so important. The key thing here is, what is their realization, and can they help us to advance in Krishna consciousness? This Krishna consciousness will provide us the real solution, going to the root of the problem. Ultimately, will allow us to get free of all material miseries altogether and go back to Godhead. The idea that science and technology or economic development is the solution to our problems is not true. These things need to be there, but if they're not connected to Krishna consciousness, then it'll be like an empty shell. There'll be the Krishna consciousness, the economic development, but it will feel empty. So, to solve the problems of life, let's depend on the teachings of Lord Krishna. Let's band together with other devotees and in the community, and then we can share Krishna consciousness with others and feel the happiness of being connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The next station is Parnell.
All right.
Pathways from Parnell station may not be suitable for some customers. Please consider Newmarket or Britomart as alternatives.
So I just have a couple of stops before I have to get off. I don't see any comments, but I've seen that there have been a few people listening. And if you do have any comments, please put it into the comment section, because I do look over them later on, just like last week. Amiya Mahaprabhu wrote a very thoughtful comment, and I replied to it. And hopefully I've addressed that today when I was mentioning about wherever you live, even if you live in the city, try to grow some of your own food as much as possible and make friends with your neighbors. These are two ideas that I got. And in the comment that I wrote to Amiya Mahaprabhu, I put a link also to a person speaking about how we can prepare, just a sort of on a material level, but very practical things that we can do. So I might share that also once I've posted this video as well. So thank you for, oh, here's a comment. I see a red light. Hare Krishna Bev, thanks for being here again. You're like a stalwart regular, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. So anyone else that likes to leave a comment, I will check later on, and I will either type a comment or, maybe I'll reply in the next class. So thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Oh, Yogeshwar Sharma, thank you also for being here. Hare Krishna.